Imagine this. The full moon rises, its pale light cutting through the silence of the night. Somewhere in the distance, a howl echoes across the mountains. You feel your heart race. That sound, that primal cry, awakens something deep inside us, an ancient fear that stretches back thousands of years. Today, we're diving into one of the most enduring legends of humanity, werewolves, but not just the movie monsters. You know, we're going back to ancient cultures, uncovering how shapeshifters, wolves, and occultism shaped myths across the world. From the snowy forests of northern Europe to the deserts of Mesopotamia, stories of humans transforming into wolves appear again and again. Why? What was it about the wolf that made it the perfect symbol of fear, power, and the unknown? Buckle up, because this isn't just a story about hairy monsters under the full moon. This is about the way our ancestors understood nature, spirituality, and even their own darker instincts. Let's start in ancient Greece. The Greeks were among the first to write extensively about men turning into wolves. The legend of King Lycan is infamous. He dared to serve Zeus a meal of human flesh, testing the god's wisdom. As punishment, Zeus struck him down and transformed him into a wolf. From this myth, we get the word lycanthropy, the condition of becoming a wolf. For the Greeks, it wasn't just about turning into a beast. It was about punishment, about crossing forbidden boundaries. A king, a ruler, falling into savagery that was the ultimate warning. And it's worth noting, Greek rituals in Arcadia included ceremonies where men would dress in wolf skins and live apart from society. It blurred the line between symbolic ritual and real transformation. But the Greeks weren't alone. Travel north into the dense forests of Scandinavia, and you find the tales of the Ulfhednar, the wolf-coated warriors of Norse mythology. These weren't just soldiers, they were shapeshifters, fierce fighters who wore wolf pelts and believed they could channel the strength and fury of the animal. Much like the berserkers who fought in a frenzy, the Ulfhednar were feared on the battlefield. Imagine an army charging at you, not just men with swords, but warriors who believed the spirit of the wolf coursed through their blood. It's the very definition of psychological warfare. And yet, Norse culture didn't see wolves as purely evil. Wolves were cosmic creatures too. Think of Fenrir, the monstrous wolf who would break his chains during Ragnarok, bringing about the end of the world. Wolves were destructive, yes, but they were also essential to the cycle of life and death. In this way, the Norse didn't just fear wolves, they respected them. They knew that the wolf was not just predator, but also guardian, a creature that stood between the natural and supernatural worlds. Let's move east to the land of Mesopotamia. Here, over 4,000 years ago, clay tablets tell us of men who could take the form of wolves. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest stories in human history, there's a moment where the goddess Ishtar is accused of turning a former lover into a wolf as punishment. For the Mesopotamians, shape-shifting was a sign of divine power, the ability of the gods to humble mortals. And in the daily lives of people, wolves prowled the edges of their villages, a real and terrifying threat. When you live in a world where wolves can kill your livestock and haunt your nights, it's no wonder they become symbols of punishment and transformation. But perhaps the most fascinating werewolf traditions come from the Celtic world. The Celts believed in druids, wise men and women who could harness the forces of nature. Among their many powers, shape-shifting was one of the most feared and respected. Druids were said to transform into animals, including wolves, to spy, to fight, or to punish. Some medieval Irish tales describe men cursed to roam as wolves for 7 years, only finding peace when the cycle ended. Here, the line between magic and curse was razor thin. Werewolves weren't simply monsters, they were woven into the spiritual life of the people, reminders of both the gifts and dangers of the natural world. Now, let's not forget the Romans. Roman writers documented tribes in Eastern Europe and Gaul who were believed to practice rituals of transformation. One historian even claimed that certain men from Arcadia could transform into wolves for 9 years, but if they abstained from eating human flesh, they could return to human form. Sound familiar? That rule would echo in countless later legends. Once you become a wolf, the way back to humanity depends on resisting the darkest instincts. This idea of giving in to the beast or holding on to your humanity became one of the core themes of werewolf mythology worldwide. And of course, we must look at the Slavic traditions. Long before Hollywood, Eastern Europe had its own terrifying tales of werewolves or werewolf. In some regions, the werewolf was closely tied to the vampire. Both were seen as cursed beings, caught between life and death, doomed to haunt the night. In fact, some stories suggest that if you killed a werewolf, its spirit might return as a vampire. The idea of transformation wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, a corruption that lingered beyond the grave. That's why so many Slavic tales describe elaborate rituals to protect villages from these creatures: iron nails, holy water, charms worn around the neck. When you live in constant fear of disease, invasion, and famine, your imagination turns those threats into nightmares with fur and fangs. But here's something fascinating. Not all cultures saw werewolves as evil. In some Native American traditions, shapeshifting into wolves was a gift. The wolf was a guide, a teacher, a connection to the spirit world. The Navajo, for example, told stories of skinwalkers, powerful witches who could transform into animals, including wolves. While skinwalkers were feared for their dark magic, the underlying idea remained. The ability to shift between human and animal wasn't just a curse, it was a way to access hidden knowledge. In other tribes, wolves were seen as protectors, totems that gave hunters strength and families guidance. Imagine the contrast. In Europe, a werewolf might be a monster. In North America, that same transformation could mean wisdom. What connects all of these traditions? Fear and respect. The wolf was always there at the edge of the forest, howling in the night, watching with glowing eyes. To ancient people, the wolf represented what they couldn't control. It was nature, raw and untamed. Imagining humans becoming wolves, they gave shape to their fears, but they also gave themselves a way to understand power, to explain why some warriors fought with terrifying fury, or why some rulers fell into cruelty. Werewolves weren't just stories, they were lessons, warnings, and sometimes even symbols of hope. And then, there's the link to occultism. As Christianity spread through Europe, pagan rituals involving animals and shapeshifting were demonized. The church declared them heresy. Suddenly, werewolves weren't just cursed, they were servants of the devil. Trials in the Middle Ages accused men and women of witchcraft and lycanthropy. Confessions, often tortured out of the accused, told of people rubbing magical ointments on their skin to become wolves, or making pacts with demons under the moonlight. What had once been a cultural symbol of transformation became a sign of evil in the eyes of the church, and that association stuck, shaping how we still think of werewolves today. But here's the twist: despite centuries of fear, the werewolf remains one of the most compelling figures in our imagination. Why? Because it speaks to something deeply human, the struggle between our civilized self and our wild instincts, the tension between NTROL and chaos. In every culture, across thousands of years, this story keeps coming back, and maybe that's the real secret. We tell werewolf stories not just to scare ourselves, but to remind ourselves we are never fully free of the beast inside. So next time you hear a howl in the distance, ask yourself, is it just an animal, or is it an echo of something much older, something buried deep in our collective memory? Because if history teaches us anything, it's that the line between human and beast has always been thinner than we'd like to believe. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with a friend who loves a good mystery. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. There's a lot more to uncover, and I'd love to have you along for the journey.